Welcome back to Echo Ridge. Today, we really need to knock out some achievements. The first one's not going to be too bad. I think we're going to go ahead and complete Home Sweet Home. When I was looking at what I was going to be able to accomplish this episode, I noticed that not all the duplicants had 16 morale. I knew the issue wasn't over here in our home planetoid because, well, everybody's in the high 20s to 40s. But over on Rikazon, things aren't as nice. But then I noticed some of the dupes didn't have a lot of skills. Specifically, Ryan and Jack died. I just put them in some more skills, which made them happier, which then gave every duplicant that we have 16 morale or more. So now all I have to do is build a great monument. And that should be easy enough to do somewhere over here. As for the other two initiatives, they're going to take a little bit more time. Cosmic Archaeology is going to require us to get 9 more terrestrial artifacts. We've already completed the space artifacts. And the only way to get terrestrial artifacts is visiting planetoids. The Great Escape, we also still have to go open the temporal tear, establish another colony, and then send a duplicant through the tear. So that's not going to be this episode either. I figured though, we might be able to get 4 nature reserves, because just like the rest of the achievements, I don't believe it matters if it's on one colony or 4 different colonies. Not 0 Kelvin, but pretty cool. Reduce the temperature of a building to 6 Kelvin. Well, I might be able to do that right over here in our hydrogen tank. I'm just gonna back this off to minus 271. Yeah, it's gonna freeze a bunch of our hydrogen, but that's no big deal, right? Speaking of hydrogen, I've tapped into this source here. Since we now have a power plant with 4 steam turbines tapping off of some geothermal power, our power situation has been doing just fine. So in that, guys, I've set up another overflow for our hydrogen. As long as there's hydrogen backed up to at least this point, the hydrogen's going to separate on both levels and head all the way up to the top of our colony. And it was quite the complicated run. But we did this, that way we could get even more hydrogen into this tank here. Right now it doesn't look great because, well, we're super freezing the entire place. Now chances are it's never really going to back up for us again down there in our industrial complex because there is an overflow up here to a high pressure gas vent. But at this point in the game, power is not our primary concern, knocking out those achievements are. I wonder, if I remove the grooming station from this room, it will no longer be a stable. And then I just put a park sign down, will that make it a nature reserve? I don't know, but we're gonna try. No, but we're pretty close. It would be a nature reserve except there's industrial machinery in here. Hold my drink for just 1 second. Look at that, we now have our second nature reserve. Don't worry, Pips, the grooming station will be coming back soon. We did the same up here to this Pip Ranch. And for the last one to give us the total of 4, well, we're just gonna try to split this one nature reserve into 2. I know, a little cheeky. Each nature reserve only has to be 32 tiles. And right on time, we have a new colony achievement. Some reservations. Now I can go back to fixing all this, and I was smart about it to leave a couple of conveyor loaders up here. So all I have to do once these finish being built is copy their settings back over. Because I managed to save their settings. Not that we couldn't have figured out, I just figured this would be an easier method. With them reinstalled, now all I have to do is copy and paste, and we're right back to normal now. I did the same thing down here as well. And around that time, it looks like we've already completed the monument base, which for those you didn't know was a total of 10 tons worth of materials. 7.5 tons worth of steel and 2.5 tons of obsidian. Now for the midsection, which is also 10 tons, but this time 2,500 kilos of ceramic, 2,500 kilos of plastic, and another 5 tons of steel. Thank you, game. While the duplicants are working on that, I figured I'd introduce you to the ESS Larry, Mo, and Curly. We had multiple people in the comments recommend this for the names of these rockets. Something about the original forms of chaos. But more importantly, I have built out a bare bones rocket inside of ESS Larry. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm going to grab a new blueprint, highlight over it, bare bones rocket, and then I'm going to use this blueprint in the other 2 rocket forms. And here's Mo. Now each of these rockets are going to have different missions. The ESS Larry is an exploration rocket, the ESS Mo is a colonization rocket, and the ESS Curly is a digging rocket. And while the interiors will differ for each rocket's mission, the bare bones kinda stay the same, but we'll go ahead and adjust them after these guts are done. The biggest difference is going to be in the colonization rocket, because I'm going to try to squeeze 4 dupes into it. On our way down to 0 Kelvin, this is kind of what it looks like. We actually have tiles of solid hydrogen. Yes, you don't see this every day. With the midsection done, it's time to put the top on. Once again, costing us 10 tons. 2,500 kilos worth of glass, 2,500 kilos worth of diamond, and 5 more tons worth of steel. Yes, all that glorious steel that we just got done making is now sitting in a monument that's not going to do anybody any good. The ESS Larry, our exploration rocket, is about complete. We have all the piping in place that's going to be running our wall toilet. We don't have to worry about germs up here because the radiation is going to do a mighty fine job of just destroying all the germs. Hence the reason we don't have to wash our hands. Please don't try this at home. We have our air filtration system, starting off with the oxalite that we're loading up 20 tons inside the storage bin. We're putting it up top here, that way it doesn't overpressurize the cabin by deleting some carbon dioxide down here. And instead, we have a gas element sensor that's looking for carbon dioxide. When it does, this mini gas pump will start pumping until the carbon dioxide goes away. All the oxygen is filtered to go up to this gas vent. Anything else is going to be ejected outside the rocket. Easy peasy. Now, because this is an exploration rocket, we have a telescope. We also have this built into a mess hall. It's gonna be a great haul in just a minute, don't you worry. But we also have a refrigerator loaded up with 50 kilos worth of berry sludge, which if we take off the grounded tag, well, that's awkward. I was trying to take off the grounded tag and apparently we've reached an imperative. For those of you not aware, this is gonna contain some spoilers. I'm gonna let this run, but here's your warning. Spoiler warning. Big old letters. Well, that's not what I wanted the monument to look like. We're going to have to adjust that. Now, clearly that's not true because we're not eating pickled meal. And here's our wonderful little message after the party. 1 imperative down, 2 more to go. Now, the great thing is because we've completed Home Sweet Home, I can actually destroy this monument. We've already checked that box. Now, granted, it does give a plus 48 decor and a very large range, but duplicates don't really come over here. But being that I love my dupes so very much, we're going to go ahead and make sure they feel appreciated. And as usual, we're going to dedicate this monument to our friends, Rover and Sweepy. One day, Rover, the dupes will figure out how to build that battery for you. Anyways, back on to important stuff. As you can see, when we uncheck the grounded tag, we have 200,000 calories worth of berry sludge, which should be enough for 100 cycles inside this rocket. Let me go ahead and reactivate the grounded tag. And after they finish uploading about another 5 tons of oxalite, and don't worry, we have plenty where that came from. Even after loading up that almost 20 tons inside the rocket, we still have about 70 tons remaining. I suppose I could turn oxalite production back on for a little bit. I only need 20 tons per rocket, but it'd be nice to have some in the backstock. Now, the ESS Curly is our digging rocket, so its interior is not going to be too different. And by similar, I mean it's exactly the same. Because this ship is just going to be flying around, there's no reason why they can't do some telescoping if the opportunity presents itself. We also upgraded all 3 of the rockets to have a carpet interior, and that way we can make sure all of our spacefaring duplicates get those wonderful tickled tootsies. And by adding the party line phone, as I said I was going to, we now have a great hall and a barracks. So when you add in the berry sludge that they're going to be eating, the +6 to morale from the Great Hall, and the +1 to barracks, at a minimum, they're all going to be given a 15 morale. And that's not even counting skills, which they're getting a morale benefit because they have an interest in it. The ESS Mo, well, we had to sacrifice a few things in this one, mostly due to the fact that we have 4 Atmosuit docks in it. We get all the basic requirements, to include the fact that we're still getting a Great Hall and a barracks. The difference is we're going to have to do everything a little bit manually when the rocket comes home. Unlike in the Larry and the Curly, whose refrigerators will both be loaded up with more berry sludge and more medicine, we can only stick 1 refrigerator in here, and that's right next to the toilet. So we'll have to manually select and deselect the rad pills and the berry sludge, which is okay because we have 4 duplicates that are going to be living in here, so we need to make sure and be very careful with not only the amount of oxalite that's in here, but also the amount of rad pills and berry sludge. Speaking of oxalite, we have an automatic dispenser in here, and we're dropping off all the oxalite. Now, we're putting every bit of oxalite that we have on the colony inside this rocket, which now that I think about it, I'll be able to get rid of the automatic dispenser and put in a second refrigerator after all. I'd still have to do some finagling though, because 100 kilos worth of berry sludge is only 400,000 calories, and feeding 4 Hungry Boy dupes, that would only make it, I think, for what, 50 cycles? With each duplicate eating 2,000 calories per cycle. The last thing we need to do for the rockets is install some water, and that way they can use the wall toilets. All of this water is 95 degrees, so we will not be using it. So we're going to be pulling right off of our primary line here once again. The only issue is going to be getting the pipes up there, because as you remember, this is a little bit of spaghetti. While I was looking at this, I realized I completely missed the input for these fuel tanks. That could have backfired a little bit. Now, when putting these bridges in, I'm choosing to put them on the fuel lines themselves because the blobs don't actually sit inside the liquid bridge. At no time is there an actual liquid sitting in the middle. It literally sort of teleports from one tile to the other. So this is actually going to help keep our temperatures stable, even though we're using something horrible like sedimentary rock. Speaking of which, with all the clay that we got delivered over from Enviroland, it's resulted in 20 tons worth of ceramic. So while I'm over here, I might as well upgrade some of these lines. I also want to do one more thing that I don't know if I'm going to be able to reach, so it's going to take some finagling with the ladders, but I'm going to plug all these batteries in while we're sitting here on this planetoid. At the minimum, the ESS Mo needs to be plugged into power, and that way we can have 4 full Atmosuit docks before we take off. While we're in flight, it's not going to be a big deal because the hydrogen engine provides 600 watts worth of thrust generation. But as soon as they land, they only have 1 solar panel module to rely upon, so that's when we would be adding a wheel. I do have an extra transformer here, so I'm going to check the melting temp of our cobalt because we have a little bit of extra cobalt, and it is 1400 degrees. So that's not going to work, except maybe way up here, because all of this down here is going to get molten hot. Oh, so many things are going to break, I just know it. Guess we're using steel. And there goes another 2 tons of steel. Yay! I'm starting to get a little concerned that I may not understand the requirements behind not 0 Kelvin, but pretty cool. Right now it says our coldest building is 11.9 Kelvin, but all we have to do is reduce it to a temperature of 6 Kelvin. Which from my understanding is around minus 267 Celsius. In fact, it's minus 267.15. And as you can see, this liquid reservoir is at minus 268. This liquid pump is at minus 268 as well. Maybe they can't be entombed? I'm gonna waste a whole lot of hydrogen by digging up these 2 tiles and see if by unentombing the liquid reservoir, if it'll then count for that achievement. And of course, as soon as we dug out all that hydrogen, the liquid reservoir dropped in temp. It's at minus 259. So that's not going to work either. Maybe I'll just wait for the liquid pump to get even colder and then dig it out, and hopefully it'll have a second where it is below that minus 267.15. Unless I'm just completely misunderstanding what it means by the word building and 6 Kelvin. I also have another idea. For those of you who watched my last video on the conduction panel, does it count as a building? We're gonna find out. While the dupes are working on that, I wanted to highlight a couple of things over here on Rikazon. They're currently experiencing a meteor shower, except it's of the slime variant. And the slime meteors, well, they don't hit very hard. We don't have to worry about it. And although it only says gold and slimy meteor showers, there's another type that is filled with regolith, death, and destruction. And what happens is those meteors hit so hard, they actually break the insulated tiles under the bunker tiles. We don't have to worry about it on this planetoid because we have a buffer between our bunker tiles and the next row of tiles. So as painful as this is, I'm gonna have to deconstruct all of these insulated tiles and put at least a 1 tile buffer between the bunker tiles and them. I'm actually thinking about not putting insulated tiles back at all. And maybe our oxygen would be able to absorb how hot these bunker tiles get, or I can throw that cooling loop back up towards the top. And that way I don't have to worry about any damage at all. I mean, if the duplicates never have to go up here, does it matter if it's a little warm? Well, apparently the conduction panel doesn't count as a building either because it is now sitting at minus 271. Alright, what if I use the conduction panel to try to supercool the liquid reservoir? I might be able to squeeze it right here. And if the conduction panel operates the same way as it did, or is working for these meteor blasters, that should get the liquid reservoir down cold enough. And it's working! The liquid reservoir, even though it is sitting in a vacuum, is quickly diving in temperatures. Please let an unentombed liquid reservoir count as a building. By the way, for the purposes of this achievement, I have stopped hydrogen flow. I should probably let it fill and just stop it by automation though. Alright folks, well apparently a liquid reservoir does not count. We are now approaching minus 270 C, so now we're going to deconstruct the liquid reservoir and put another building down there. Like maybe a grooming station. I don't know. I'm shooting from the hip at this point. And the magical conduction panel, even though we're sitting in a vacuum, is doing wonders. Our grooming station is at minus 170, minus 180. Like I can't even keep up with it. The grooming station is now at minus 271 degrees, and we still haven't triggered that achievement. So some Googling has told me that this is one of those achievements that's notoriously bugged. I'm gonna try giving the game a nice restart and see if that helps. This isn't one of the big achievements that I'm too concerned with, because, well, I already have it, but the completionist in me still wants to get it for this run. As soon as I loaded it into the game, it says colony achievement earned. Anyone want to take any guesses? And there we go. Not 0 Kelvin, but pretty cool. Or as I like to say it, not okay, but pretty cool. Now let's go through the process of fixing our hydrogen container. I'll already start to heat this back up to a toasty minus 254. It makes me wonder if I would have just restarted while it was entombed, if it still would have worked. With everything fixed, we now just have to wait for this supercoolant to get back down in temps. It won't take too long as we keep injecting 83-degree hydrogen in here, and when all this does flip into a liquid, hopefully we don't, break the sides of the container. Hydrogen has started flowing again, and we've managed to get our entire tank back to a liquid. Save about a ton here, and a few tons over here. These are going to take a little bit longer because they're in debris form. Now, the big rocket is going to take 900 kilos times 3 tanks, or 2.7 tons. The smaller ones are only going to take 1,800 kilos. We have just about that sitting in the tank now, so I figured it would actually help warm this place back up a little bit if we get that hydrogen sort of flowing and get it inside the tanks. Once it's inside the tanks, we don't have to worry about it flashing. It's truly one of the miracles of oxygen not included. For instance, this liquid oxygen has been sitting in the oxidizer tank for, 50, 80 cycles, and it's still sitting at minus 195.3. Without much fanfare, Larry is already filled, and as stated before, all that hydrogen will just sit there at minus 254. Next up, we're filling Mo. A couple of updates over on Rikazon. I've made some changes to the rail system. Now the rail is going to take a left and filter past the Weezeworts and route itself all around the top of the colony before finally hitting a 50-50 split with this conveyor loader. I'm doing that because all of this metal is pretty chilled. Remember, it's going through this wonderful massive debris chiller. And the idea is that the slow rotation of metals around the top of the planetoid will end up keeping it cool enough so when death and destruction rain from above, we should still be okay. One issue we've ran into is one of those blue moon situations. Both the natural gas geysers went dormant. This one, next activity is 5.5 cycles, and this one is 1.9 cycles. And we barely did not have enough natural gas in reserve. So I'm getting rid of these 2 kilns, and I'm going to add a couple of more gas reservoirs down here. Over on a home planetoid, every rocket is completely filled, and we only ended up with 1 broken pipe. And I see exactly the reason why, because it was made out of sandstone. Oops, we're going to go ahead and upgrade that. Also, I'm checking to make sure all the other ones are still ceramic. Oh, looks like we had a couple more break here, and they were ceramic. So I'm going to drive this temperature down 1 more to minus 255. And I just realized what the problem is. Because there's not a lot of liquid in here, just like before, these tiny little blobs don't have as much thermal mass, so they flash much quicker than their full 10-kilo cousins. So now that the rockets are full, I'm just going to put the liquid pump back to our normal state and let this whole container fill back up. But it's still pretty nice to see that we have all 3 rockets filled. Now, the question becomes, who's going in them? For the ESS Larry, we're going to send Angry Forest, for the simple reason they have astronomy so they can use the telescope, along with the rocket piloting. For our digging rocket, we're going to send Nazgul. Naz doesn't like to do much other than wearing suits. Unfortunately, Naz doesn't have a choice in the matter because they're also going to need some astronomy. but the morale requirement only goes up to a 12, so they'll be just fine. And as for our colonization rocket, aka the ESS Mo, I'm gonna pick a good mix of duplicants. For instance, probably a Dave Hammer because they're a mechatronics engineer and have some great skills. A Whiskey T Fox so that we have a pilot. And while we're at it, we're probably gonna put Whiskey into some plumbing. We'll need a digger, so I think we're gonna go with a Carol. And then lastly, we're gonna add another mechatronics engineer just because they're typically the dupes that have a lot of skill points because they've spent most of their time running around, running on machines, and building things. Well, as scary as this is gonna be, our rockets are fueled up, they're filled with water, and we've even upgraded the interiors. The ESS Larry has some nice cloud print drywall, which helps out the decor a little bit. The ESS Mo has plungers because, well, it's Mo. We're finishing up the loading of 100 kilos worth of rad pills, and we already have our 100 kilos worth of berry sludge. The only thing that's going to make this a little different is I'm going to uncheck this, select sweep only, and go down to our kitchen and grab a little bit more. And now when we unclick grounded, you can see that we have almost 800,000 calories worth of berry sludge. Before somebody comes and goes potty, of course they did. Why would you come all the way up here, Patrick? And then the ESS Curly has a nice little mosaic thing going on. Well, apparently the grounded is not stopping them from using the wall toilet now. No, Doritos, that's not your berry sludge. I'm gonna hurry up and get this rocket loaded. But before we do, we need to add one more component, and that is the Atmosuit checkpoint. And I just realized the plug is in the way. Can I put the plug up here? Ah, very nice. Hold one while we make a small modification. With those modifications complete, we're now ready to crew up all 3 rockets. Well, that way, of course, that we can launch all 3 rockets at once. Because if we know what kind of damage all 3 rockets are gonna do, we don't have to worry about one measly rocket. And apparently I crewed up the 4 duplicants in the wrong rocket. Please hold. There we are, that's much better. Why are you still grounded? And now for destinations, we're gonna take the exploration rocket and go all the way over here with our range of 48 tiles. Man, it's so good to see that. As for the ESS Mo, I think the maiden mission is gonna be down here to the Gassy Moo planetoid. We're gonna scoop one of those up and bring it back home and maybe play with some space cows. So we'll head to the orbit right there. As for our drilling rocket and the ESS Curly, well, we can go anywhere we want to. I think we're going to start by getting some stuff from the radioactive asteroid field. Not that we need a whole lot of this stuff, but it'll be great to get a brand new artifact. Now, I am hinging all 3 of these rockets on one small fact. I seem to remember that the hydrogen rocket also holds artifacts right here. I'm pretty sure that's the case. It's just been a very long time. Now, I am going to save the game right now because I am sure I'm about to booger this up, and I'd really like a picture of all 3 hydrogen rockets going off at the same exact time. Begin launch on 1, begin launch on 2, begin launch on 3. Here goes nothing. We have ignition on 1, 3, and 2, and so far, so good. I mean, it's a little toasty, but not bad. It looks like we lost some bridges. No big deal, I can put those back. Oh, what did I build those out of? Let's try obsidian this time, shall we? With that fix in place, well, we're rocking and rolling now into the end game. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of Larry, Mo, and Curly. Their continuing mission, to get all the achievements, and that way Echo can end this forever series. I hope you had a great time with this episode. I know I'm very excited to see these rockets now flying through space, so I suspect we're actually going to be able to knock out several more achievements in the next couple of episodes. I can't wait to hear what you think in the comments below. Remember, every single comment actually helps out the performance of the video, as does you liking it. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.